Well, hey, good evening. This is David Bereit, and after a false start, we are finally ready to start the Students for Life of America Defunding Planned Parenthood in 2017 event. I am the first one who gets the opportunity to welcome you here today. And on this event, I will be serving as your host. I have gotten to know many of you through Students for Life and also through my past pro-life involvement. Many of you may be aware that I launched and led a little pro-life effort called 40 Days for Life through its first decade. And by the grace of God, we saw that effort mobilize more than 700,000 people across 675 cities throughout 40 different nations. And again, by the grace of God, through your prayers and efforts and those of many other people around the world, we saw 40 Days for Life see 12,668 children spared from abortion. We saw 141 abortion workers have a change of heart and leave the abortion industry. And thankfully, we saw 75 abortion centers close their doors and go out of business for good. That was a great chapter in my life, but you may or may not have heard, but just this past December, I stepped down from my role as CEO of 40 Days for Life to pray and prepare for a brand new project, which is not yet ready to announce, but when it is, we'll be sure to let you know more about that. But I'm here tonight because I have had a long and wonderful relationship with Students for Life of America. I served on the board and have done so for many years with Students for Life. And I've been friends with and worked very closely with Kristan and Tina and Brendan and the entire Students for Life of America team. And I've met so many of you at the East Coast or the West Coast Students for Life conferences or other workshops. Also in my travels to more than 500 cities across all 50 states. And many of you I saw just this past fall as we were doing a 50-state tour. And I personally went to 87 cities and saw so many of you along the route. But tonight, here today, or this afternoon if you're on the West Coast, I'm excited to be able to host, on behalf of Students for Life, this Facebook Live event called Defunding Planned Parenthood in 2017. And to bring you greetings on behalf of Students for Life, I'm going to switch the camera over now to Kristan Hawkins. And many of you know Kristan. If I can get the camera to switch over, it is hanging at the moment. And Kristan, the webcast technology is continuing to give us fits just like it did the first time. So we can hear you.
That's great.
Hopefully
we'll just see your beautiful face.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's a beautiful thing. But Kristan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? And if I can get the camera switched over to you, I will do so. And if not, then I'll do a little dance while you're talking.
Yes. Hey, everyone. It's Kristan Hawkins, President of Students for Life. I'm just a little talking head behind David. We are so excited to have this webcast tonight. We really wanted to have an opportunity to share with you all what's happening in Washington, D.C., our strategy and where we're really at and one of our strategic steps towards abolishing abortion in our lifetime, which is defunding Planned Parenthood, the abortion Goliath in our nation. And so I'm hoping tonight helps to give you that why, as to why we're doing what we're doing, and to help give you tools, practical tools for how you can talk about this issue with your friends on campus, with your family, people in your parish, and your church. So I hope you stay tuned. We've got a lot of great information coming forward. The first thing we want everyone to do is to share this. Make sure you're getting it out on Facebook right now so we can get a bigger audience for more of the details that are coming in throughout the webcast. And you can also make sure you're commenting below. Tell us where you're from. We have a few team members who are sitting here, some behind me, who are typing away, answering questions and helping as much as possible because we know this is a complicated issue. We know you have a lot of thoughts on this, and so we want to hear from you.
All right, Kristan, thank you very much. And we're still having a little bit of a hang on the software we're using to pipe into the webcast. So we still don't see you yet, Kristan. I hope we will be able to here shortly. But you are more than just a voice in the background. And I know you're there. I can still see you. But for whatever reason, we're having some technical challenges. The joys of technology. One other thing that you can do here on the Facebook Live, Kristan mentioned to jump into the comments and post your thoughts and questions. She mentioned to share. If you're on a mobile device, a smartphone, down in the bottom left corner to the left of the comments and the emoji section, you can tap on the little invite icon and you can actually invite somebody. It'll send a push message out through Facebook to somebody, invite them to be here. And then also, as you see there at the bottom, there's those little emojis that we're all used to on Facebook. And as this event goes on, make sure to use those. If you like something, click the thumbs up. If you love something, tap the little heart. If there's something you hear about Planned Parenthood that just really makes your blood boil, tap the mad or the sad emoji. And let's make this an enjoyable event where we can all interact with one another. So what we're going to be covering during this Facebook Live event today is specifically the topic of defunding Planned Parenthood this year in 2017. We're going to cover the unprecedented opportunity that we have right now and why this is such an important moment for this cause. And we're going to talk about, Kristan's going to cover why Planned Parenthood needs to be defunded. You hear a lot of people in the media, a lot of celebrities, a lot of people praising Planned Parenthood as if they're the most wonderful health organization in the country. We're going to dispel all those myths, and we're going to bring you the truth about why this organization is so devastatingly harmful and needs to be defunded. We'll also talk with you about where Planned Parenthood gets its well over $1 billion a year of funding. What are those sources of funding? Because you need to know where the money comes from before then you can know what to do to begin defunding Planned Parenthood. And last, at the end, we're going to give you some calls to action. We're going to tell you what you can do. If you're a student, if you're a student leader, if you're somebody in the community involved with other pro-life efforts and you just love Students for Life of America like I do, we're going to give you specific action steps of things you can do to help get the momentum building around this effort of defunding Planned Parenthood. And by the time we're done, we feel that we will be on a path towards victory and we'll have the opportunity to take advantage of this moment in time and help to defund Planned Parenthood. So I'm with that going to share with you a few thoughts about this opportunity that we have right now of defunding Planned Parenthood. I learned a lot this past fall when 40 Days for Life, when I was leading there, launched a 50-state tour. We called it United, and we went to all 50 states in 40 days. I mentioned that I personally went to 87 of those cities. And by traveling across the country and by getting to meet and see you and so many others, I realized that our pro-life movement is more vibrant than ever. It's alive, it's growing, it's getting younger and more dynamic, more energetic, and people are willing to take a public stand more than ever before, right now in record numbers. The other thing that I saw as I traveled the country this fall is that pro-lifers are starving for hope. They are starving for something that they can do right where they live, not waiting on government to fix the problems, but they want to take action. They want to be a part of something that is bigger than themselves. They also want to do more than they are currently doing. And I saw that over and over again. And they want to see victories. They want to see the tide finally turn for the sanctity of life here in America. Now, all of that completed on the Sunday, this tour that I was on, before the national election. And as we all know, on that Tuesday in November, the outcome of that election shocked the entire world because after decades of setbacks and frustrations and defeats, pro-life advocates were beginning to get frustrated and disheartened, and they were worried that we were just going to have to prepare to defend against another onslaught of attacks. And yet, what the entire world said was impossible not only became possible, it happened. Hillary Clinton and her pro-abortion agenda funded by Planned Parenthood was defeated, and Donald Trump was elected, much to everybody's surprise, and there were many pro-life election gains made all across America. And literally, that one night, the entire landscape changed for our pro-life movement. And as a result of that, we have to realize this is not a moment for us as pro-life advocates to be timid. This is not a moment for us to play defense. This is a time for courage, and this is a time to go on the offense. We have a narrow window of opportunity right now to leverage this moment in history. And frankly, I feel that if we fail to act, it could be decades before we have this kind of opportunity again. So what we need to do is look at the opportunity and say, where can we make the greatest impact? Well, right before that fall tour I was referencing, I read an amazing book that I think every pro-life advocate should read. It's a book called The One Thing. The author's name is Gary Keller, and Gary Keller is part of the Keller Williams Real Estate Company. But the premise of the book is that the secret to achieving extraordinary results is not to do more things than we're doing and get busier and busier, but instead to simplify and focus. In fact, there's a little saying at the beginning of the book that says, if you chase two rabbits, you will catch neither. Each of us need to prioritize, find the most important thing we can do to achieve the greatest impact, and do that first. And the author, Gary Keller, talks about the importance of asking a focusing question. At any time, when you want to determine what is the single most important thing I can do right now to achieve the greatest impact, he thinks you should ask a question to get narrowed down onto that. Now, the question he presents in the book is, what is the one thing I can do to make the greatest impact such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So it's all about prioritization. It's all about picking that most important thing, because then it will snowball into making everything else easier. Well, the morning after the election results, I woke up and I thought about this book and I thought about that focusing question, and I modified it just a tiny bit as a filter to be able to look at the pro-life movement. And the question I asked myself, and a question I'd encourage you to ask yourself, is, what is the one thing that, if achieved by the grassroots pro-life movement in this new post-election landscape, would have the greatest impact and would make everything else we do easier or unnecessary? Again, there's a lot to unpack, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that question, but repeat it one more time, and then that's a question to ask yourself in your pro-life efforts. What is the one thing that, if achieved by the grassroots pro-life movement in this new post-election landscape, would have the greatest impact and would make everything else we do easier or unnecessary? So as I thought through all the possibilities the day after the election, I reflected on the 4 pro-life commitments that Donald Trump made to the pro-life movement as he was campaigning for president. His 4 commitments were, number 1, nominating pro-life justices to the U.S. Supreme Court. Number 2, signing into law the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which would end painful late-term abortions nationwide. Number 3, defunding Planned Parenthood as long as they continue to perform abortions and reallocating their funding to community health centers that provide comprehensive health care for women. And number 4, making the Hyde Amendment permanent as law to protect taxpayers from having to pay for abortions. So as I was thinking through those possibilities, and I was thinking about the landscape changing, all of these are important things. Some of them we don't have all that much control over, but when we ask, what can we directly affect? And from my vantage point, what one thing would give our movement what they're starving for and what would have the greatest impact? Without question, it was that third item, defunding Planned Parenthood. National leaders, Kristan's been a part of these meetings, and Brendan and Tina, this has been dominating the discussion since the election. I was at a meeting with David Daleiden, who exposed Planned Parenthood's baby body parts trafficking, and he described defunding Planned Parenthood as the ultimate prize. And we see for the first time in decades, Planned Parenthood on the defense. They took a big risk. They went all in for Hillary and the abortion agenda, and they lost. They are now panicked. They are now on the defense. And they know their funding is in the chopping blocks. You see it in the media everywhere you turn, and they are more vulnerable than they have been for decades. Now, let me give you one example of why defunding Planned Parenthood is important. And I'm going to use a case study from the state where I used to live, the great state of Texas. And I think this will help to illustrate the importance of this before I then transition to Kristan, where she will cover why defunding Planned Parenthood is so important in terms of this organization and what is so bad about it. Let me go back to the year of 2013. The people of Texas, through their elected officials, were enabled to pass a measure that stripped $32 million a year from Planned Parenthood, from the tax dollars that flowed through the state of Texas. They identified where the tax money was going to Planned Parenthood. They shifted those funds to community health centers, similar to what Donald Trump's pro-life commitment said. And they were looking for places that provided comprehensive primary and preventative care, because that's a standard of care that all women, including low-income women, deserve. And they also realized that Planned Parenthood doesn't provide comprehensive health care services. So after they stripped that Planned Parenthood funding, $32 million a year, Planned Parenthood shut down 9 of their abortion centers in the state. They went from 14 down to 5. But it wasn't just Planned Parenthood. The ripple effect had the same kind of impact on other independent abortion centers who were already being starved out by Planned Parenthood. In the state of Texas, prior to that defunding measure, there were 46 abortion facilities, and after that, there were 19. More than half of the abortion centers in the state closed after defunding Planned Parenthood. And not only did the facilities close, but the abortion numbers went down. The fiscal year of 2012-2013, the first year that went into effect, they saw a drop by 5,000 a year. 2013-14, they saw it drop by another 9,000 on top of the 5,000 per year. So they have seen already a 14,000 per year drop in the number of abortions in the state of Texas because they defunded. The day after the election, I actually was on a flight. I went down to Texas. I was filming a video in the headquarters of 40 Days for Life, and it was inside the former abortion center in College Station, Texas, the Planned Parenthood facility that Abby Johnson used to direct. And as I sat at the wooden table where 40 Days for Life began, which is now inside that closed Planned Parenthood abortion center, I realized that facility would not have closed but for three things. Number one, prayer. And I believe that's a critical piece because with God, all things are possible. As a person of faith, I believe that. Number two was the presence of people outside through 40 Days for Life campaigns, through sidewalk advocacy, through people holding ongoing year-round prayer presence outside. But the third, the straw that broke Planned Parenthood's back in that community and across the state was the defunding of Planned Parenthood. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that was why that facility in 2013 was one of those in Texas to close its doors and go out of business. What kind of effect could this have nationwide now that we have this opportunity on the table in this new post-election landscape? We could see more Planned Parenthoods close, we could see more other independent abortion providers close, and we could see more lives saved. So with that, Kristan, I'm going to turn it back over to you to go into why Planned Parenthood is bad and why defunding is so important. And we'll see if we can switch the camera back over to you or if we're still having technical challenges.
Sure. Thanks, David. That was phenomenal. You summed up, really what we've been working on for so many months and why this is so important. I've 5 main points for you all as to why we need to work so hard to defund Planned Parenthood. 1, Planned Parenthood is about abortion, not healthcare. 2, Planned Parenthood is a corrupt organization under criminal investigation in multiple states. 3, Planned Parenthood is a racist organization. 4, Planned Parenthood is a political machine. 5, redirecting Planned Parenthood's taxpayer money to federally qualified health clinics that are already receiving taxpayer money will be a win for women's health because they're the ones who provide comprehensive services to women, men, and children across our country. Look, Planned Parenthood's about abortion. That's it. They gross over $1 billion every year. They make more than $127 million a year in profit. And this is as a non-profit entity. We're giving them over $500 million. So almost half of their operating budget every year comes from us, the taxpayers. What's really interesting and something you may not hear when you talk to, pro-choice or pro-abortion friends and family, Planned Parenthood's services for cancer screenings and prevention services since 2006 have been cut in half. Since 2009, their prenatal services have been cut in half. Yet, their abortions have skyrocketed. Abortion is down more than 12% across the country.
That's right.
But yet at Planned Parenthood, they're only down 1.6%. In 2006, Planned Parenthood committed 1 out of every 5 abortions. In 2015, it was 1 out of every 3. The pattern is very clear here. Planned Parenthood is cutting their other services, getting more taxpayer dollars, and increasing their share of the abortion industry. That's why, as Abby Johnson, one of the most shocking things to come out of some of her testimony after leaving Planned Parenthood is that her clinic forced her employees to have an abortion quota, meaning they had to sell so many abortions every single month to clients walking in the doors. I think when we're on college campuses, David, that's one of the most effective talking points we have, especially when we're talking to people who may disagree with us about abortion. Once we can show them that Planned Parenthood is an abortion industry, they're about one thing only. It really doesn't matter where you stand on abortion. As long as you know they're taking advantage of women across our country, they're frauding taxpayers, they're getting more and more of our money, and their services are going down. Right. Now, Planned Parenthood, they're currently under criminal investigation. This week at Students for Life, we launched a website called ppcharges.com. It's a super simple site, and the goal was just to take all of the criminal investigations that are ongoing against Planned Parenthood and put them in one place, because I know it's so confusing. We've had the House Select Panel, who's done a year-long investigation. The Senate, U.S. Senate, has also done a year-long investigation. From those investigations, they've actually recommended to several states now to have criminal investigations of Planned Parenthood and their business partners, those, third-party vendors who are buying the babies they had aborted to sell them for parts. So this is super important that when we're telling our friends and family, we make sure they understand this is not something about just being pro-life or pro-choice. They're actually under criminal investigation for breaking federal and state laws. They've broken federal and state laws. In Texas, for example, David, the Planned Parenthood clinic affiliate down there, they actually had to pay the state back over $1 million in a settlement because it was found that they were double billing the state of Texas for years. They paid over $1 million in fees. Now, Planned Parenthood is also a racist organization. Planned Parenthood, as many of pro-lifers know, was founded by Margaret Sanger, who started the quote-unquote Negro Project. You can Google it. This is true. Mm-hmm. Planned Parenthood operates the largest chain of abortion facilities, and guess where those facilities are? 80% of them are located in minority neighborhoods. African-American women make up about 13% of our population, yet they submit to over 35% of all abortions. They've been caught accepting money to abort African-American babies. It's very clear Planned Parenthood's history and where Planned Parenthood is targeting. Planned Parenthood is a political machine. They are literally the linchpin in the cycle of corruption in Washington, D.C. They get taxpayer dollars, then they go back to their clinics and they fudge the numbers a little bit, and they sell contraceptive drugs at a higher price than what they pay for them. They make a profit. They take that profit and put it into fundraising and PR. Then they have a C4 and PACs. They raise more money, and then they go and they lobby on behalf of bills, legislation, good legislation that would protect women and save lives and pass, they lobby against common sense safety regulations. And then they put that money into elections, electing more politicians who promise to go to Washington, D.C. and vote for more money for them. It's a corrupt cycle. I don't know how many people know this, but Planned Parenthood actually bragged in 2016, this fall, Cecile Richards was in Rolling Stone magazine bragging about how Planned Parenthood had a larger ground operation, more political employees than Hillary Clinton's entire campaign. They bragged they put more than $30 million into Hillary Clinton's election. More than $30 million. And by the way, 99% of all of their political monies that they raise go to Democrats. Now, women will win when Planned Parenthood's taxpayer dollars are redirected to federally qualified health centers. I can't stress this enough. This is something we talk a lot about on campuses, that once again is one of those bridge issues. No matter if the person you're talking to may be pro-choice, they might disagree with you on abortion, this is something that everyone can understand and actually agree with. There's more than 13,000 federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, in our country today. They serve low-income men, women, and children, often in underserved areas, especially rural areas. These federally qualified health centers provide every single service that Planned Parenthood provides, minus abortion, plus so much more. And they're truly nonprofit. We already have these federally qualified health centers across the country. It's very easy for us to redirect Planned Parenthood's current $500 million in taxpayer funds to these federally qualified health centers so they can expand, so they can grow, and they can serve. Federally qualified health centers currently serve more than 21 million Americans every year. Planned Parenthood, they're about 2 million. They know what they need to do, and they're not going to go take their profits that Planned Parenthood has and throw it into the election cycle, because they're truly nonprofits. They're truly there serving members of their community. So I hope some of these talking points help. And I wanted to let you know that I ran through some of them very quickly, but we have a lot of them, and a lot of these statistics along with footnotes to the original sources, most of which are taken from Planned Parenthood's own annual report. We have them up on our website. It's called WeDon'tNeedPP.com. The site is super simple to operate. We have sample texts, sample Facebook messages for you when this topic comes up, because this is coming up right now, David. You know, Planned Parenthood, once again, Cecile was on the cover of Rolling Stone last week, and she was talking about how they're launching their biggest ground game ever, because they know they have to make their case to the American public in the next 30 days. And so they're going to go to social media, which is where they spent a majority of their money in the election, and they're going to put out every story they can, and they're going to spin their, web of lies, and it's going to be your friends and family who are going to be seeing their ads, seeing their petition. So it's going to be really important that you all go to WeDon'tNeedPP.com, get the samples, Facebook and Twitter statuses. Check out the videos, the short educational videos we've made. You can use them. You can share them. If you have a ministry, use them in your own ministry. Get them out there, because they will educate your friends and family about this issue. The other thing we've launched on WeDon'tNeedPP.com is a very simple letter from the pro-life generation to our leaders in Congress, demanding that they defund Planned Parenthood this year, right now. And we would love for you to sign that letter. There's never been a pro-life generation letter that's gone up to Capitol Hill to our leaders in both the House and the Senate. And we are so honored to be able to put together this letter and to get Students for Life leaders in every single state, every single school. We want you to sign on, because when we deliver that letter to Capitol Hill in a few weeks, we want them to know that not only are there more than 1,100 active Students for Life chapters across the country, but these groups, your groups, represent tens of thousands of college students, tens of thousands of high school students who are voters and who are watching Washington, D.C. and paying attention and making sure they hold up to their promises of defunding Planned Parenthood.
That's right. Well, Kristan, I hate to tell you that the entire time you talked, people had to look at me, because the streaming software we're using is just being temperamental, to say the least. But as my mom used to always say, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape. So if anybody thought I was a ventriloquist trying to throw Kristan's voice in, no, you were listening to Kristan Hawkins, the president of Students for Life of America. And Kristan, we also had it fancily set up here. If I wasn't still looking at the little beach ball of death on my computer at the very moment we're here, we were going to actually show the WeDon'tNeedPP.com website. But I decided to go a little bit old school, and to help show the website, I'm going to go ahead. There you go. There's the website. If you can see that, WeDon'tNeedPP.com. I don't know if you can see that on there, but okay, that's the best I can do. Sorry about that.
I even put makeup on for this, David. So.
Well, I'm sure that your husband will appreciate that no matter what. I mean, fancy schmancy. So let's shift the gears for just a second. And I would encourage everybody, please do go visit WeDon'tNeedPP.com. and spell it out. It's WeDon'tNeedPP.com. There's no apostrophe in there. So WeDon'tNeedPP.com. And when you go through that site, you can see all the different resources that Kristan was talking about. You can sign the letter, and we're going to cover that a little bit more. Sample tweets, watch the videos, learn more about Planned Parenthood, about the tour that Students for Life is going to be planning, learn how you can get real help. It's a great resource, a brand new website. Really take advantage of everything that's there, and then share that with everybody you possibly can.
The website's actually in the comments below, David.
Perfect. See, I'm trying to multitask. I've got the comments going over here, but see, I'm still sticking with my old website over here on paper. I just can't do this.
It was very high tech. It was a good attempt.
We were trying. So good thing we have Students for Life team in the comments there handling all of this. Wow, this is awesome. Okay, so let's shift the gears for a second. Planned Parenthood, we mentioned it gets over $1 billion a year. Where does that money come from? If we're going to defund this organization due to the reasons Kristan shared, they're about abortion, not health care. It's a corrupt organization under criminal investigation, a racist organization, a political machine, and it's important to redirect their funding. Where do they get funding? Well, there's three primary sources of funding that Planned Parenthood receives, and then there's a few other little minor sources. But of those three, I'm going to go through them in progressively larger amounts. So one of those three sources is the customer dollars. That's the people who walk in the door to get an abortion, who walk in the door to get abortifacient drugs or devices. Those are the people who walk in the door, and the dollars that are attached to them are 24% of Planned Parenthood's revenue, or a grand total of $309.2 million. It's a big chunk of change, but that's tied to the feet that walk in the door of a Planned Parenthood facility. That's one of the three. The second source of Planned Parenthood's funding, slightly larger than the customer money, is the donated dollars. 27% of Planned Parenthood's revenue, or $353.5 million, comes from big corporations that funnel money into Planned Parenthood. It comes from big liberal foundations, the Buffett Foundation and others, that funnel money into Planned Parenthood. And it comes from individuals that give money either because they're ideologically motivated or they're completely woefully ignorant of the harm that Planned Parenthood is doing. But that makes up 27% of Planned Parenthood's funding, or $353 million a year. Then the biggest source of funding by far, and it's growing every single year, is the taxpayer funding. Last year, last annual report that Planned Parenthood put out, 43% of their revenue, closing in on half of their revenue, comes from you as an American taxpayer. We are funding an organization that is systematically destroying our nation's future to the tune of $553.7 million each year. And that's federal tax dollars, state tax dollars, as well as local tax dollars. So that makes up the lion's share of Planned Parenthood's funding. The remainder, the other percentage, is 6%. It's other miscellaneous sources of funding. That only makes up $79.7 million. So the total last year, Planned Parenthood took in $1,296 million of funding. And I just broke down for you where those sources of funding came from. Now, here's something that's important to remember. For Planned Parenthood facilities to start closing, not all of that funding needs to go away. I've heard various different experts who have looked at this and said anywhere from 14 to 25, maybe 30%. If you can bring Planned Parenthood's revenue down in any of those areas to a total of 14 to 30%, you will start to see these facilities closing, just like that case study I share with you of the state of Texas, where after stripping $32 million of taxpayer funding, they saw 9 Planned Parenthood facilities close, and they saw more than half of the abortion centers across the entire state go out of business. So that's where Planned Parenthood gets their funding. And Kristan, where do we begin? How do we start right now at the beginning of 2017 to defund Planned Parenthood? What is our first step?
Well, the first step is budget reconciliation. Now, I know a lot of people have been asking me questions of what the heck is budget reconciliation. I do not remember from my civics class. Reconciliation is essentially a special budget process that will enable Congress to pass budgets quickly. So Congress has already set a budget for this year. However, legislation has to be proposed that brings their spending in line with their actual budget to make sure they meet their budget, something they haven't been doing for a long time. So when this final bill is debated, this budget reconciliation bill, to bring that spending in line, amendments can be added as long as they do not increase the budget. So at this point, an amendment to defund Planned Parenthood is expected to be added, as this is what happened in 2015. The good thing and the really important thing you need to know about budget reconciliation is that you only need 51 votes to get this passed. You can change the funding numbers, but not the policy. This is very important because in the U.S. Senate, we do not have a filibuster-proof number of senators who would make sure we could defund Planned Parenthood 100%. So what we can do through budget reconciliation is we can defund Planned Parenthood of 80% of their federal funding, and we only need 51 votes, which we currently have. We currently have 51 senators who should vote, as they did in 2015, to defund Planned Parenthood as an amendment in the budget reconciliation bill. This would happen beginning of February, mid-February, maybe late February. But this is the timeline we were looking at. And then it will go to President Trump's desk, and that he would be expected to sign it. This is very important that you understand that this is only 80%. It's not the full 100. And this is a temporary fix. It's not a permanent fix because this isn't an actual piece of legislation that says defund Planned Parenthood. You know, we, the United States Congress, will never defund Planned Parenthood ever again. So this is a temporary solution. However, this would be a huge step. You know, it'd be that first big domino and that topple of dominoes, because we know they rely so much on our federal funding. To take away 80% of their federal funding for the year is going to be disastrous for them. They're going to have to raise that money, or God forbid, they won't be able to put it in PR or in the political process. So this is very important. Reconciliation is the word. When you're talking to your congressmen, your senators, you want to say, I want Planned Parenthood defunded in the budget reconciliation process. And I want to happen this February. So any of you going to the March for Life in Washington, you can stop by your congressman and more importantly, even your senator's office. This is what you need to say.
All right. Well, Kristan, you covered that beautifully, and I appreciate it. And again, I'm sorry that we can't pull up your face. That was Kristan Hawkins, president of Students for Life of America. Believe me, from the Skype signal that I'm receiving that's not getting piped out into the Facebook Live, she has makeup on, she got her hair cut, she looks great. So just imagine it. Kristan, maybe I should, on my little tablet here, I should draw a picture of what I see, and then I can show it to everybody so they could at least appreciate how great you look tonight for this event, for everybody who's joined us. But that is the most important first step, getting Congress to pass this reconciliation measure that needs just a simple majority to get passed with no Planned Parenthood funding in it, and then send that to Donald Trump's desk shortly after he takes office. That is the first step that we need everybody to be focused on, and that will be the most important thing related to defunding Planned Parenthood at this moment in time. So what can you do? We're going to answer some questions here in a few minutes, and we're going to have Brendan tomorrow, who's going to be another voice coming out from out of nowhere, who's going to help us answer questions. But let me give you a few things for you to do right now and over these next few days, but then also stay tuned because there's a whole lot more coming on the front of defunding Planned Parenthood. This is just the very beginning of it. So number one, you need to educate yourself and others. So you can go back and watch and or listen to this Facebook Live, and we will try to get other events in the future to work better so you don't have to look at me the entire time. But go back through this information that was shared here on this event today. Also, go to that website, WeDon'tNeedPP.com. When you go there, you can get all the talking points, you can watch the video, you can educate yourself, and then you can use that information to share to educate others. There's going to be a lot of misinformation. There already is in the media, the Hollywood celebrities, the big corporations. You're going to hear a lot of misinformation. It's up to us to take to the streets, to do what we can on social media with our friends, in our classes, on our campuses. We need to do whatever we can. And the tool, WeDon'tNeedPP.com, is the best place to start. Also, I'm going to give you a concrete action item to do tonight, today, right now, when this event is over, or if you can multitask while we're on this. When you go to that site and you scroll down, right below, and I'm looking at the site myself right now, when you look at the site and scroll down, there's a section that says sign the letter now. And go to that section, and there's a big pink button that says sign the letter from the pro-life generation. And when you click it, it will actually open up for you a letter that you can then send on to our leaders in Washington, D.C. saying, pass a reconciliation measure that does not include funding for Planned Parenthood. Again, go to WeDon'tNeedPP.com, scroll down to the section that says sign the letter now, click the big pink button, and then fill in your information, and you can send that letter on right now or as soon as this event is over. Also, the messaging we've shared tonight is the messaging that the pro-life movement has recognized is most effective at helping people to understand Planned Parenthood is bad and the organization needs to be defunded. This has been put together by a lot of really good communications professionals. Believe me, people a lot more intuitive on these things than I am. And Kristan and I have been a part of the meetings where these things have been hashed out. This is the messaging that has been proven to work and proven to take those who even may not be pro-life, but come to understand that Planned Parenthood is not a good organization and does not deserve to receive taxpayer funding. So those messages are Planned Parenthood is about abortion and not health care. They set quotas to do more abortions. They require their affiliates to do abortions. They did hundreds of thousands of abortions each year, over 1 million in just the last 3.5 years. Secondly, Planned Parenthood is a corrupt organization under criminal investigation. And Kristan mentioned that awesome resource that Students for Life of America just put up, ppcharges.com, where you can learn all of those different investigations and charges being filed against this corrupt organization. Third, Planned Parenthood is a racist organization. Their founder, Margaret Sanger, wanted to eliminate the human weeds, which she deemed as those who were ethnic minorities, those who were physically infirm, those who were mentally challenged. She wanted to get rid of them to purify the race, and that's why she was a celebrity when she spoke at KKK rallies. She talks about those events in her own biographical books, in her autobiographies. Fourth, Planned Parenthood is a political machine pumping tens of millions of dollars into this last election cycle and doing everything they can to undermine pro-life candidates and pro-life laws. And finally, that redirecting Planned Parenthood's taxpayer funding to federally qualified community health centers is a victory for women, for women's health, and this is a measure that is supported by the majority of Americans. Work that messaging. If you are a leader of a Students for Life chapter, if you're on social media, if you're communicating with friends at your local pro-life organization, your pregnancy center, get those messages out. Repeat them over and over again to where literally somebody could come into your room in the middle of the night, shake you and wake you up and say, why should Planned Parenthood be defunded? And you could literally just pull those off your memory and spit them out. We need to have those messages down. As leaders in the pro-life movement, which you are, you wouldn't be here on this Facebook Live. And last, I'll say, stay tuned. Over these coming days, over these next few weeks, there are going to be more events unifying the entire pro-life movement on this strategic opportunity at this strategic moment to ensure that everybody is utilizing consistent messaging and that we are working together to achieve more than we could ever do on our own as independent organizations and as independent pro-life advocates. So, Kristan, with that, I will turn it back to you and Brendan to maybe pull a few of the questions that we've had coming in. And again, I regret that I can't switch the camera over to you. I think Brendan may have put on his makeup as well, got his hair cut, or... No, we were joking before the event that Brendan actually came over to Kristan's house, and I thought he was going to come over in his pajamas. But apparently, I did see the Skype image. He is not in pajamas, Brendan, so I know you are legitimately dressed for the occasion. Thank you. Sorry we can't show that to anybody. But people in their mind may just picture you with your footsie pajamas. I don't know what's going to happen in their mind. But for whatever it is, Kristan, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we can dive into some questions. And
Sure.
Looking forward to answering some of these comments that have come in.
Yes, Brendan, what's some of the best questions we've got so far? Give me some good hard ones.
We don't have a whole lot of hard questions. A couple of things just to clarify and bring together. One of the questions is where can we find federally qualified health centers? Where can we find the nearest community health center to us?
That's a good question. you can
Kristan,
well, now you can go to getyourcare.org.
That's it.
And that's a website compiled by our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. And they have all the federally qualified health centers listed there, I think, as well as pregnancy resource centers.
I believe so, yes.
There's also a HRSA website, which is linked from our We Don't Need Planned Parenthood website, which is the official, quote unquote, government website for the federally qualified health centers. But I think getyourcare.org.com is a good solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so getyourcare.org or going to we don't need pp.org. So a couple of other questions that we have are kind of the budget and how this works. So if you could explain, how this money gets to Planned Parenthood, where in the budget is this money going to Planned Parenthood?
I point to Brendan. He can answer this question. This is a hard one.
The short answer is there are a few different ways. What we're going to be getting at here in the reconciliation process is the money that goes to Planned Parenthood through Medicaid reimbursements and through Medicaid payments. It amounts to about $400 million a year. We've already seen, I think we mentioned earlier, some of the issues of some Planned Parenthood affiliates being found guilty of defrauding the United States government and some state governments through Medicaid. But that's where this gets them is through Medicaid. Other parts of the federal government budget is through some of the Title X programs, as well as through some administrative orders, which we expect soon-to-be President Trump will be able to overturn.
Yeah. And this is really important, too, because we actually found out, I saw an article a couple of weeks ago talking about apparently Planned Parenthood's been getting millions and millions through a high school education program, a sex ed program that we didn't even know about, and this is our job. And this is why personnel policy is such an important thing for us going forward, and why I've been so impressed by President-elect Trump's appointments, his nomination, especially Congressman Tom Price. He's nominated him to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Congressman Price is a doctor, was a physician for many years. I think he might even still practice as a congressman. He knows the ins and outs of the healthcare biz. But he's also 100% pro-life and 100% with us. And that's what's so important. As someone who used to work at HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, there's a lot of money hidden there that we don't even know. And this is going to be an important time for us to work within the administration, throughout the bureaucracy, for funding for multiple different pro-life organizations, and hopefully, get some abstinence funding and things like that.
So some of our other questions have to do with the House and the voting and lobbying. So to kind of quickly run through that, we aren't expected to have any trouble passing the reconciliation bill or passing the amendment in the House of Representatives. We have a significant majority there, and the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, has publicly committed to defunding Planned Parenthood through reconciliation. So we're not concerned so much about the House, but the Senate vote will be very close. If the current senators vote as they did when this was done in 2015 and vetoed by President Obama, we will have a 51 to 49 edge, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And so there's some hope with some senators, someone like Senator Manchin in West Virginia or Senator Heitkamp in North Dakota.
Mom, if you're listening, you need to call Senator Manchin in West Virginia.
And some of these other senators who are representing more pro-life states. So there's some hope with them, and there are some Republicans who should be pro-life who were worried that they this time around might not vote for this amendment to defund Planned Parenthood on the reconciliation bill. So it's very important. So someone like Susan Collins, I believe, did not vote
in Maine. Anyone from Maine needs to call Senator Collins.
As well as Senator Murkowski in Alaska.
Yes, we've got Alaska. Hey, we have a North Pole Students for Life group. I am so proud of this group. They're facing a little bit of pushback right now from their administration. I have volunteered. I will make the trek up to Alaska for them. So we got to get them on board.
I want to go on that trip too. Yeah. But yeah, so it's really important to just start now. Because I know the Planned Parenthood marketing machine and their lobbying machine is already up and running, especially in the House. So start now. Tell your friends. Mm-hmm. Post on Facebook every day. Do something. Whether you're calling your senators' offices, tagging them on Twitter or on Facebook every day between now and when this vote happens in February, and get all your friends, get all your family, get everyone you go to church with, get all the people you work with, everyone you know who's pro-life. Get them to be calling your senators as well.
And I know we talked a little bit about this last year with our Students for Life America National Conference. By the way, if you're not going, you need to register at www.sflalive.org, West Coast and East Coast. This is so important. And I think pro-lifers kind of get sick of talking about Planned Parenthood because who wants to talk about Planned Parenthood? But we have to be a broken record on this, and we have to stay united on talking about Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood wants you to get sick of talking about them. They want you to say, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to move on to a different subject. That is how they win. We have to keep talking about this. And I know it's not going to make you the most popular person at your workplace, your school, or your church, but this is what we are called to do as abortion abolitionists. We've been called to witness the truth in love. And we have got to be out there witnessing against what Planned Parenthood is doing, because what they have done is they have killed an entire generation of Americans. They've betrayed an entire generation of American women, and we are morally responsible for it because we are paying for it.
That's right.
Any other questions, Brendan?
Yeah, we got one more question that came in. What do you do if both your senators are pro-choice or pro-abortion? There's a couple things. One is you have to educate them. You also have to be educating their staff, because their staff are the ones who are making a lot of these decisions and are writing a lot of the bills. So you have
to visit them.
Yes.
If you're going to be in D.C., make an appointment. Say, hey, I'm a constituent. I'd love to come in and talk to you about reproductive rights. And they'll be like, oh, great. It's another pro board. And you sit down and you print out some flyers, print out some information from our website, and you have a discussion with them. And you say, let's go through these talking points line by line, because guess what? It's their job to sit there and listen to you. Also, find out where their offices are in your state, their regional offices. They don't get a lot of visits, and we know they get a little scared when people find out where they're at. So keep educating them.
It's also really important, in addition to educating, to still call and register with them, or go and visit and register with them. Hey, I want you to vote to defund Planned Parenthood, because they actually count. Every single phone call that comes in, every single visit that comes in, they count and keep a tally. And so it's important for us to continue showing, hey, you have a lot of pro-life constituents, and this is what we, the voters, want you to do as our representative in the United States Senate. So even if you don't think there's any hope of your senator changing his or her mind on this, it's still important to call in.
Absolutely. And I'll just, I saw one comment in here from Ricky Silva, who I got to see out in San Jose.
Ricky, I will not be at the West Coast March because I will be at the Women's March in DC, but I will see you at the West Coast Conference.
There you go. Well, Ricky and I got to stand next to each other at the San Jose when the United Tour came through. And Ricky is asking a few questions, but one of them was, what specifically can Students for Life of America chapters do? And Kristan and Brendan, just maybe to summarize, what are a few things that a specific Students for Life chapter can do now and over these next few weeks?
Well, thanks for asking that, Ricky. We love you. No, this is very, very important. This month, our event in a box was actually We Don't Need Planned Parenthood. And that's where we had free resources for you. You can still request those event in a box through your regional coordinator or just info at Students for Life. Just email us, info@studentsforlife.org. We will be relaunching our We Don't Need Planned Parenthood tour this spring, actually this February on college campuses. And our regional coordinators will be emailing all the Students for Life groups across the country, signing up groups who want to host this display. For high schools, we'll be doing something a little smaller. It won't be a big display, but we can get the same message out to your high school as well. This is what I think is probably the biggest thing that you can do this spring, is really to have this conversation on your campuses.
Absolutely. Well, Kristan, one last thing you made me think of. You're talking about what a Students for Life of America chapter can do. If somebody's watching this and they're a student and their campus either doesn't have a chapter or they're at a high school, what could they do to learn more about getting connected with Students for Life of America?
Yes, actually, I think we got a new Students for Life group started over this webcast, David.
Hey, that's
we are
awesome.
so excited. Reagan, our regional coordinator out there in Missouri and Kansas, is so pumped.
That is great.
So make sure you put where you're from in these comments, because we will find you if we don't have a group at your school.
There you go.
Okay, so if you don't have a Students for Life group at your school, or if you have a child or grandchild who is in a high school or college campus and even middle school, you can just email us at info@studentsforlife.org or apply in the comment thread below and tell us what school and ask us, hey, do you have a group? Here's my email. And we'll be happy to shoot you an email, let you know if there's a group near you, and or give you the directions for starting a Students for Life group. It's very simple. We're there with you every single step of the way.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristan. And I know we had said we were going to finish this up in under an hour, and that's far too long for anybody to have to look at just me. And again, I apologize for some of the technical challenges when we had the false start on our first Facebook Live feed. It was because my computer locked up where we were trying to pipe all this through. And regrettably, even once we got it back up and running, thank you for your patience on this event. You didn't even get to see Kristan Hawkins after she put on all her makeup and got all dressed up, and Brendan Amaro.
That's what happens when you use PCs, David.
Ooh,
Mac baby.
ooh. And we'll just not mention that Brendan is in his footsie pajamas, because I can see, nobody else can see that. But Brendan, thanks for helping answering questions. Kristan, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do and for leading Students for Life in such a profound way. It's been an honor, and we'll continue to co-labor with you in the Lord's harvest field in this work. Just to summarize and thank everybody who's been here, and I wish we could have recognized everybody by name like we did with Ricky and others, but for everybody who commented, who liked, who put a reaction, everything you did during this event, thank you. If you want Students for Life to do more of these events, preferably where somebody else is the face you see throughout the entire time, go ahead and put that in the comments as we wrap up. But still, there's a lot of great information here, so share the video afterwards. It'll become a permanent video on the Students for Life of America Facebook page. But to summarize tonight, we talked about the unprecedented opportunity we have, this post-election landscape. This is not the time to be timid. This is not the time to play defense. We have to go on offense, and we have to be courageous. And the greatest opportunity we have as a grassroots pro-life movement is to defund Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion chain in America that is doing so much harm in so many different ways. Kristan outlined it. You can learn more at the website that Kristan talked about, wedon'tneedpp.com. We talked about where Planned Parenthood gets its funding, and that the largest source of revenue is their money, the 43% that comes from taxpayer dollars, you funding the organization as it's destroying hundreds of thousands of children a year. And we talked about how we will begin defunding Planned Parenthood step by step, the first step being getting Congress to pass a reconciliation measure that does not include funding for Planned Parenthood, getting it to Donald Trump's desk, because he and his campaign committed that he would defund Planned Parenthood as long as they do abortions, and he would redirect those resources to federally qualified health centers that provide comprehensive health care, which Planned Parenthood doesn't. And the things we said at the end, what you can do, educate yourself and others at the WeDon'tNeedPP.com website. Share that with everybody you can. Sign on to the letter on that website. Promote it to other people, your Students for Life chapter, people on your campus, people in your neighborhood. Include the key messaging we've talked about tonight into your communication. Planned Parenthood's about abortion, not health care. Planned Parenthood's a corrupt organization under criminal investigation. Planned Parenthood is a racist organization. Planned Parenthood is a political machine. And that redirecting Planned Parenthood's taxpayer funding to community health centers is a victory for women's health and something that's supported by the majority of Americans. So those are the things that you can do. Stay tuned over these next few days, these next few weeks, and we can't wait to take these steps together as we work to defund Planned Parenthood for once and for all. Kristan, I'll give you the last word if there's anything you want to say before we sign off for the night.
Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you share this. Get this replay going with your friends and family because there was so much great information given this webcast. I was taking notes. I hope you were too. Thank you for all that you're doing on your campuses and in your communities. It's an honor to serve you. I can't wait to see you in San Francisco and out in Washington, D.C. in the next week and 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you, Kristan. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Good night. See you soon.